There we go.
There we go.
All right, let's hope this works.
Are you having Wi-Fi issues or Zoom issues?
No, I don't know what happened. There we go. All right, I think we're good.
Technical difficulty.
You would think by now we would have a better system for connecting on the internet, you know?
There's always issues. Even with my job, we're virtual and there's always issues. Always.
I know. It's ridiculous. I was just writing a few notes because I've been thinking about how we're going to be talking about this movie, and there were so many things that I wanted to touch on and talk about that it's like I better write down a few notes so I don't forget. So I just did that really quick while I was restarting my computer. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you well.
Oh, okay, because I got my microphone plugged in. Just want to make sure.
I should have done the same but I watched it yesterday, last night.
Yeah.
I actually really wanted to rewatch it and write down notes because I was just watching it just to watch it. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. I love this movie. I didn't think I was gonna actually love it. I think it's it's gonna be considered one of my newest favorite films. I actually went for a walk earlier and I was listening to the soundtrack.
Oh really?
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
But anyways, before we start, hi, how are you? How's your Sunday?
Good. It's good. It's been pretty uneventful, but I did manage to go for a walk today despite, the recent weather. So that felt good. It was in the 50s today. So I was only in the 50s today, but yesterday was the first time we had sun in what feels like months. So I should have gone yesterday, but it was okay. I was doing my errands and being busy yesterday, but so that felt good. And then the rest of the day was pretty uneventful. But how about you? How was your Sunday?
It's been good. I spent most of it cleaning and eating.
Mm-hmm.
And I went for a walk and I got lucky because this morning was pretty dreary, and then the sun came out for a couple of hours, and then as soon as I came back, it got dreary again. So I got lucky. In honor of today's movie episode, I got
the whiskey.
But I made myself an old fashioned.
Doing my water kick, so I still got one. So we'll
I got
cheers.
My water too. I got it too.
Oh, good.
I actually went to Whole Foods because I wanted to get the bitters, the Angostura bitters to put in here, and I got myself an orange. You can't see it, but there's an orange peel in there. It looks.
Yeah.
I don't have ice.
How is it?
I didn't try it.
Oh, you haven't tried it yet.
It's bullet bourbon, and I'm also weirdly enough I'm eating sausages.
Oh, there you go. I don't know. I was gonna say that kind of fits with the Western theme. I don't know. Did they eat sausages?
That was not planned. That was not planned.
It's a country dish, yeah.
Where out of curiosity, because I don't remember, well, not that I don't remember. I remember hearing about this movie, but not really. I heard that it was a new film that came out. But I didn't know, I didn't hear anything else about it.
Me either.
I only knew about Benedict Cumberbatch and Kirsten Dunst being in it, and that's it. That's all I knew. So I didn't even know about this film.
Yeah, I didn't either. The only way I came across it was when we were searching for films that night directed by women, and that's when it came out on Netflix specifically, and that's when it came up. And then I noticed now it's under, how Netflix has the categories. It's critically acclaimed films or something. I think it might have been under one of those categories, and I saw it and I was like, oh, okay. But it was after I already added it to my list. So, I really hope that it's something that comes up. You know how on these streaming services there are some films that you really need to search for. They don't come up automatically in kind of you know,
It also
just
goes
when
to
you,
it's like based on your algorithm.
right.
But
Yeah.
so like if you watch like something specific, it'll like it's funny, my Netflix algorithm is so weird because I watch both like Indian movies, like Bollywood movies, and like American movies, but also I watch American reality TV show. So they keep like recommending for me to watch Bollywood Wives. I'm like, I don't want to watch that.
Let's just blend the two into a show and give it to her. Yeah.
Which it might be
That's
actually
funny.
up my alley, but I'm like, this is not what I want to watch. I don't want to watch
That
this.
is funny. It's funny because I always think of this has nothing to do with the film, but I always think of reality TV as a very American TV thing. I mean, I know like, Europe has some, I'm sure that they have their own versions of what we have. And I know they have things like, you know, I don't know, like the singing contest kind of shows or Dancing with the Stars, but like their own version of that. But when it comes to, like our sort of trash TV, kind of thing, I always think of that as a very American thing, but apparently it's not.
It's
It's
not.
other countries have their own versions of everything, right?
Yeah, I know
The
it's
Real Housewives.
off
That's
topic,
funny.
but like I agree with you. I thought the same thing too. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know much about like reality TV history. I only know the only thing I do know is that growing up, I used to watch a lot of MTV, and my sister watched.
Mhm.
What's it called? Road Trip? It wasn't real life. Oh wait, was it real life? I know there was a True Life, but there was like another show that came before True Life. True Life was like a docu series. Well, it was like a docu series, but each
Yeah.
yeah, its own category. But like there was one before then. I think it was called Real Life or Road Trip. Well, I don't know why
Yeah,
Road. That's not the
The
name of
Real
it.
Life was a show. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like with the younger people. I don't know if they were teenagers, but they were definitely like much younger.
Yeah.
And like one guy had like AIDS, and like we basically watched him die like on TV. But
Yeah.
apparently that like set the groundwork of reality TV, even though that wasn't really produced the way reality TV is produced now. So I always thought
Yeah.
that like that was the start of reality TV. But then again, I don't know if that's true. Like I could be making that up. But I thought the same way. I thought it was a very like American thing until
Yeah.
years and years ago. I watched. I used to follow this YouTuber. I can't remember her name, but she's Swedish, and she like was Swedish, grew up in London. I don't know, some weird, you know, hybrid situation that she had with her
Mhm.
background. And at some point, she was like, when she was living in London, she got into like reality TV, and she got into this like Swedish reality TV. And I watched it on YouTube because I was like, what is this? And like, apparently, it was a big thing in Sweden. I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I guess, and it was trash. It was
Yeah.
it was like Jersey Shore trash, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I guess I don't know. I guess we're not the only ones that have trashy people in this world.
Right. Yeah. No, that for sure is true. Yeah. I just didn't know how much other countries put their trash on display. I guess. Whereas here it's like somewhat acceptable.
Oh my
Yeah,
god,
that's
trash.
funny.
Speaking of trash TV, and again, I won't take up too much time about this, but the last trash TV that I watched, I've been recommended to watch Love Island, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. Oh my god, what show did I watch recently? Not Love Is Blind.
That's the one everyone keeps telling me to watch. I have not yet.
No, maybe it is Love Island. No, oh, Too Hot to Handle. That's what I watched.
Oh, Too Hot to Handle. Yeah, I've heard of that one too. On
That's
Netflix as well,
yeah.
right?
If you want like a real American like reality TV show, that's the one.
Yeah.
They're like
Yeah,
it's a very interesting.
they're a guilty pleasure for sure.
They are
But
like I can't. I don't know. For me, it's like I have more fun watching it with people.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if I'm with friends or somebody, even if the reason why I got into Too Hot to Handle was because my friend introduced it to me, and her and I were like hanging out together, and I had wine while watching it with her, and like it was fun to like add commentary while watching it with her. But then like when I watch it by myself, I'm like, this is I can't.
Mhm.
I can't like absorb anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. I try not to watch too much of that stuff, but it's hard because there's so much of it now, you
Yeah.
know?
It's fun. It's
And
just
then
fun to watch it with somebody else, I think. Because it's more like,
yeah.
I don't know, you get to like trashy people.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
You get to be toxic together, and it's acceptable.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anyways, I don't want to talk too much about trash TV because we're Power of the Dog was way opposite of that.
Mm,
Way opposite.
yeah.
When did you watch it? Oh,
I watched it Wednesday or probably not Thursday night. It was probably Wednesday night I think I watched it.
mhm.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm not sure. Can't remember this past week really. But it was I wasn't planning to watch it, and then I was like, you know what? I wasn't planning to watch it until yesterday actually. I was going to watch it over the weekend. So I'm going to watch it Saturday. Um but I'm glad that I did because then it kind of gave me more time to think about it. And I think it is a film that you will be thinking about, at least I was. There were things that and I agree. I really liked it. I thought it was an interesting film. I was also really happy that we we were talking about the last time. So in the first episode we were talking about the struggle of trying to find stories written by women. So this was also written and directed by Jane Campion, right? So she also wrote the story, which is amazing.
Wow.
Um, I think one of the things that came into my head though was that, particularly by the end, when I was like, wow, that was it definitely was not what I expected either. I mean, you were talking about being surprised how much you liked it. I felt the same way. I wasn't really sure about it. Even though it did have a great, at least a great cast, right? Benedict Cumberbatch, of course, Kirsten Dunst.
Oh my God, I love
She
her.
I have not seen her in anything. I feel like I haven't seen her act in many years, and I was so happy to see her in something
She's
because I love
so
her. I think she did a
good.
wonderful. She's such a great actress. Yeah.
Facial expressions.
And
There were times where like I was feeling what she was feeling, and she didn't really have that much like many lines.
right, right. Yeah. And she didn't need them. That
No.
was an amazing thing. But and of course Benedict Cumberbatch too, but about these stories, find different stories, right? Ones that aren't about being a woman. And I think that was this was so different from what you would see or what you would expect a woman to write about or direct, for that matter, that this type of story, like this is what I was inspired by, right? Is
Yeah.
finding a story that a Western film. Yes, it was definitely a new take on a Western film, which I know we're going to talk about, but the fact that it was written and directed by a woman, that was what I was looking for, right? Different genre, one that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah. It was who did the cinematography on this? I mean,
I don't know, but it was beautiful. It was really beautifully shot.
Ari Wegner, who's also a woman. I say that as like
Really?
she was also a woman.
Well, no, but that's incredible. There was also the
Because there's
cinematographer was a director. Was a woman.
because there is something I want to talk about the cinematography specifically to this.
Mm,
I and I mean, there's so many things that we're gonna get into, but like I don't even know where to start. But I think for me, it was like I loved I loved the different point of view this was for, especially for like a Western film, because Western
yeah.
films are very masculine, like I grew up watching them because my dad loves Westerns, my mom too. I grew up
Mm.
watching Gunsmoke. I still when I FaceTime my parents, they're still watching Gunsmoke in the background. And like, it's a very masculine thing. And I think like with American history, that was portrayed like as very masculine. The women were very, very feminine, you know, like very like strong, like polarizing, like roles.
Right.
And like, so when I first watched the film, the first like 15-20 minutes, I wasn't thinking of anything. I was just watching it just to absorb. And then I got, yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch, like his character, I was like, it's so annoying. Like,
Mm.
so annoying. And then as the film was going on, I was like, I I just had that idea of the feeling of like I can't imagine how exhausting it must be for a man during that time who is, whether he was gay or not, we don't know. You know, he obviously was struggling with his sexuality, like internally, but like he had to keep up the masculine, like, um, you know, portrayal of what a cowboy is supposed to be, right? Very,
Right.
very masculine, you know, drinking, be obnoxious, making fun of things. The scene where they were castrating the horse, you know, like everything was just very like, rough and rugged, and like he had to be like he had to
Right.
keep up this persona, and it's just like it was just very exhausting to watch, and it was
Yeah.
to see it from like for a woman to have to like put that in perspective of like no, like this is exhausting, and this character
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah.
You can see it like at the end, and cute. I mean, before he got sick, before then, like you could see that like at some point that he looked tired, like it was just way.
Yeah. I mean, kind of throughout the film, and I think that's what I think is so great about Benedict Cumberbatch too, just in general. And it was weird. Number one, it was weird seeing him in a Western film, right? And also kind of satisfying. I think there was something great about his portrayal of this character. Also a British actor playing, the sort of stereotypical like American story. But
I think it actually
but
plays very well with the character itself.
yes,
Because the character was masculine
I
all the
think
time,
so
right?
too.
Like, so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he really had to step in more ways than one, right? Playing the American and everything. But I think, wait, what did you just say? You just said something that I was going to comment on.
The exhaustion.
Um, yes. Yeah, I feel like so his character, at first, I didn't really pick up the sort of homosexual references and stuff until a little bit later, and I think, I'm trying to remember really if there were any
When did
early on. There may have been really subtle. What's that?
you pick it up? I'm curious.
I think for me it was, well, I think there may have been one time before, but the one that was where I really knew was when he was riding on a horse and he goes by the lake and there's all the men bathing and they're naked, and he kind of stops and is looking. He kind of looks at them. It's such a quick moment in the film, but I was like, "Oh, I get it." Like there's something going on there, right? And that was the moment where, because before then I kind of had a feeling, I think especially when he started to take to the son, a little bit more, I kind of wondered. Um, but that moment for sure was when I was like, oh, I get it. I don't know. What was it for you?
So for
Do
me,
you remember?
and it's the reason why I want to rewatch it because I'm like, I wonder if it came even earlier, or how early.
Yeah.
I saw it. I don't know if you remember. It was pretty early in the film where they arrive at the ranch and they're eating, they're making fun of the boy, flowers, sunfire, whatever, all that stuff. Um, but it was when what's his name? Phil Paul.
Phil, yeah.
Yeah. It was when oh yeah, George is the brother. It was when Phil
Yeah.
was in the barn with the horses, and he was like cleaning the saddle. Um, I forgot what his ex lover's name was.
Oh,
Oh,
Henry,
George
something
Bronco. Henry
Henry.
Bronco. Yeah, yeah. he was
Henry Bronco, yeah.
he was cleaning the saddle, and he was and this is what I was talking about. The cinematography was so excellent with this.
Yeah.
It was a close up shot of him caressing the saddle as he's cleaning it, and the way he was caressing it was so sensual.
Yeah.
It's soft because when he was around other people, he was very hard and rugged, and this was the only time like we saw him being really soft in the very beginning. So I was like, when I first saw that, I was like, is he gay?
Yeah. That's funny. That's
And I was
really interesting. I did not
going,
pick that up at all.
I saw
And
that, I was hooked up.
I actually didn't pick up that that was even his lover until even later on in the film. I was like, okay, there was definitely something between him and this former cowboy that, died and whatever, but I did not pick it up there at all. So that's really interesting. I feel like my realization came so much later. And then I
I,
just felt like
I was
everything I
just,
saw was like, oh yeah, now it all makes sense.
yeah, I was distracted. I was distracted by my thoughts of like, oh my God, this is a gay film, that I didn't even think about George Bronco
Yeah.
until he took a liking to the boy. What's his name too? Well, I'm looking it up.
This one.
Peter. Um,
Peter, right. I knew it was another P name.
I wonder if that was like that was on purpose.
Intentional.
Yeah, right. um, it was until Phil and Peter were like chatting more that he kept mentioning George over and over again, and I'm like, all right, he was definitely,
Yeah.
but
Well, and then there was the part where the boy, he talks about how Henry Bronco saved his life, and he says he put it, I mean, this was even after the scene that I was talking about, so I definitely knew at that point, but and he says he had his body up, he was saving him, and he's telling the boy the story, he's telling Peter the story, and he he was saying that Henry Bronco had his body up against him, and the boy said, "Were you naked?" And he doesn't respond, so you just kind of see his face. So it's, yeah, at that point it becomes pretty obvious too that they were lovers, I guess. I don't think I really knew what the relationship was, or I wasn't really thinking about it at the time. I think the whole time I was just kind of wondering, like, why is he such an antagonistic character? Like, why is he so, just his demeanor, like from the very beginning, and of course gets worse after George gets married, and so anyway. Um, so yeah, it was interesting. I really liked what you said too about it, which I think was the point as well, right? Is sort of, seeing that type of story and that type of character, a very masculine role, um, and sort of adding a new perspective on it. I really liked that about the film because that's not something I had no idea what the film was about before I watched it. I just kind of went in, so that was not something I was expecting. But I think you're right too. And I didn't grow up watching many westerns, so I think everyone sort of has that, especially, in America, we all have that idea of what a western is and what the characters should be, or what they are stereotypically. I do remember my mom making me watch, years ago, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which was, the
classic.
longest, felt like the longest movie ever. So, like, westerns are just not really my genre, but I really liked that um new take on it. And also, just like you said, the cinematography of it was so beautifully done.
Um,
Um, yeah, that I really enjoyed that piece of it, that it was sort of a new way, and taking in a new perspective, right? Which is why I was really discouraged to read that article afterwards, which is the one that I sent you.
oh. I come across that.
I was just reading about that. I just looked up the film, honestly, and this article came up, about Sam Elliott's comments, and I was like, oh, let's see. And I clicked on it, and I think I was looking up. So at the end of the film, one of the things that I wasn't quite sure of was whether or not, and this, I think, it seemed to be. So this was also an interesting piece that I read. Spoiler alert, right? If, like,
I mean, this is all
people have not
spoilers.
seen it, I guess. Yeah. But the end, so, like, when he dies, right, whether or not, the thing I wasn't sure of is whether or not Peter kills him intentionally or if it was accidental. And I was kind of like, oh, I bet he did it intentionally, but I wasn't sure. And
Yeah,
so when I looked up that, because I wanted to see if there was an actual answer to that.
yeah.
And it turns out when they I can't remember if it was when she was writing the story, or I think they had already filmed it. They had filmed an alternative ending, which was according to a different article that I read, was Peter was sitting at the desk, and because he's a student, he's like a medical student, he has like a book, and it says something about like the anthrax poisoning. So the camera kind of apparently just kind of does like a panorama, like kind of view over the book or something, right? And you see that. So it becomes obvious, and that was supposed to be the end of the film. So then they decided to change it so that it's like him looking out the window, seeing his mother and George, right? And sort of coming in, she's happy, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit more ambiguous, but so apparently it was intentional that he killed him. Which I thought was interesting. So I was actually looking that up first, because that was the one thing I was unclear about.
Yeah.
And then sort of just in my search of the film, this article came up. So
Yeah. Well, before we get into Sam Elliott's comments, because when I read that, I thought how ironic that this movie is about like the exhaustion of toxic masculinity, and here's this guy making a very toxic masculine comment,
right?
But before getting to that, the ending, yeah, I definitely want to talk about the ending too, because as I was watching it, I was a little confused until he looked at outside at the mother, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, you looked it up, so I didn't look it up, so I don't know how accurate this is. But in my mind, I took it as I couldn't tell if Peter was questioning his sexuality or not. He seemed like he knew himself a lot more than Phil did, or he was more comfortable with himself, at least more than Phil was. Like he never really defended like his own self, like verbally. He just, whenever people called him like sissy or Nancy, he just kind of like didn't even like,
yeah,
or like even the whole flower thing in the beginning, like yeah, it bothered him, but you know, he cried, but he just kept going. Like he found like ways to like I guess get through it. And I think like especially going to school, like it seemed like he was doing okay. Okay in those days, whatever that means. Like obviously
yeah,
the way someone would be okay now, but like it seemed like he was just able to handle it. So like it made me wonder, like, was he even like gay or not? I guess that doesn't really matter. What mattered was like he cared more about his family and his mom, because his
yeah,
mom was suffering. But then I was like, I don't know if I'm reaching. I don't know if that's what I got. Like they're happy because Phil's, demeanor was affecting his mother and George so much, to the point that it was like affecting their marriage, because the mother, Kirsten Dunst, who was fabulous, like she was drinking because of him. And George was also a very like, it's funny, like speaking of toxic masculinity, George withheld like that healthy masculine fatherly like husband, like he had it, and like he was very like strong and like quiet, and like he actually held that where his brother like didn't. Anyways, but like I just thought it was intentional, because it was almost like putting Phil out of his misery. Because what was the point of him going further with his life anyways? Like he wasn't really doing anything good. And
yeah. I definitely saw Peter, the son, as at least a sort of questioning or sort of intrigued by his sexuality, Phil's sexuality, and maybe his own, right? And I think that's what bonded them, right? Like it just kind of seemed, at first it kind of seemed jarring that um that he was so, Phil was so nasty towards him, and then all of a sudden they kind of had this bond that continued through the rest of the film. But it's almost like Phil kind of recognized that in him. But I think you're right, and maybe that's even why he was drawn to him, because I think you're absolutely right. Whether or not he was gay or questioning or whatever, Peter definitely has a much sort of healthier way of dealing with whatever it is that he is dealing with, right? that I also think, oh my gosh, so many things you said. Um, because it's also not just bringing out this like this idea of toxic masculinity, but I think also when people are repressed, how their behavior turns to abuse. And I think that's a lot of what was happening, right? That he was sort of taking it out on a number of things. The scene that really got me is when he was kind of like beating the horse, like a little bit after. Oh my gosh. Anytime I hate seeing scenes like that in films, like anytime animals are being beaten, I'm just like, I don't want to watch this. So like that
Really
scene, you
aggressive.
know, which was when his brother was getting married, right? And of course marrying a woman, right? Um, which can come from, you know, whatever his frustration in that moment was coming from a number of things, right? No doubt it was at that point was because his brother had gotten married, but even later it's like the way he was treating the wife, Kirsten Dunst, right? And just sort of this kind of almost like psychological torture with her a
Yeah.
little bit. And it really, and even the way he treated the brother, right? And sort of lashing out at him. And I think you're right. George definitely had, you know, such a difference in terms of what you consider like masculine, right? That he is sort of the healthy masculine type. Um, so yeah, I totally agree. You know, everything you said just brought out so much. I just felt like there's so many layers, right, to all the
There's so many.
relationships.
There's so many.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that kind
but
of like,
definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you know, you got good.
Well, it kind of leads into the article
I was just gonna say
because
that.
okay, okay,
All right, we're
because
on the same
definitely I
wavelength.
wanted
Perfect.
good because I wanted to say it that for me too, what you said perfectly summed up exactly what it was, right? It's kind of ironic in this way that that's what you're calling out when that is what the film is about, right? That's what the film is calling attention to, and you're just proving the point, right? So maybe we should kind of talk more specifically about it, but
Yeah, well, I mean, I know the film had a lot of sensuality, more sensuality than sexuality, which was very beautiful because
yeah,
it shows that like a man can be sensual, um, which people seem to forget. Like I don't know why. I feel like especially like in our, and I mean, I don't want to say modern day society. I think this has been going on for a long time, but like touch and like softness is seen as like weak and stupid or like weird. But it's like there is strength in that, and like a man can be that and show that, and which is why the cinematography was so beautiful because there were moments of that softness and sensuality. And sensuality is like not just about like heavy sexual lusty sort of like energy.
right.
And I know there were some shots in the film that had that, especially where like there was that one shot where like it was really hot out and all the men were sitting outside and their shirts were all off and like
Mhm.
pretty like sexy gay scene, I guess.
Right.
um, but when I texted you, when I was texting you, because I wanted to elaborate in the text, but I was like, I can't. I'm gonna save it for like this episode. Um, obviously, like, we got that there was questionable sexuality, possible, gay character, whatever. But the way that Sam Elliott, like what he said, I can't remember word for word what he said, but he made it sound like as if there were such like pornographic scenes in the movie. Like
Mm.
that's not what that was. Like he made it sound like it was such like heavy sexual like scenes. Like if someone were to read his comments and not watch the movie, it sounded like there was like heavy sex scenes or something between like two like
Right.
characters. And it's like that is not what happened at all. Like it was more psychological
Right.
more than anything. And are you looking it up?
Yeah, I am. I have the article right here.
You're like, I have it ready.
Yeah, well, first he called the film altogether a piece of shit,
Yeah.
um,
Just
with its
crazy.
quote, "illusions of homosexuality," end quote.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which is presumably what bothered him about the film. He then said, "What the expletive does this woman know about the American West?" Right, because she's a New Zealander, I think. Is she from New Zealand? Um, by the way, he did apologize, but I mean, when you say something this scathing, I'm sorry. No, I don't. I see that as just a celebrity that's being forced to apologize. But yeah, so many things about this article.
First of all, to say that film was a piece of shit is like, I mean, whether you liked it or not, it was beautifully shot and the soundtrack was amazing. The score was amazing, and the actors were impeccable.
Well, and the acting was very well done, and from start to finish, I agree. I think it was beautifully shot. I was really excited when you said it was shot by a woman because that is not something that you see a lot of still. And not to say like, oh, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, Hollywood doesn't give women. It's just, typically, for obvious reasons, it's usually men filming, right? So it's exciting to kind of see that this is a, sort of being run by women, right, and telling this story, I think is wonderful. But yeah, I think what I had said to you in my text too was that it always bothers me when actors or anybody, right, that sees either film, play, whatever it is, piece of artwork, and allows their personal opinions to affect how they're seeing the work visually, right, or creatively. Because, yeah, number one, to call it that, to call it a piece of it's that was coming from, especially considering it was followed by, its allusions to homosexuality. That's where that's coming from, right? And you're not seeing it with an objective point of view, right? Which is always discouraging. I think it also, reading that article also really touched a nerve just because I've, you know, I don't want to compare situations, but I have been in that situation before, as you know, Keisha, right? Where it's like someone's going to be offended because they don't agree with something, and all of a sudden that's affecting the work that you've done and the work that you've created and trying to undermine it. So I don't know, it really touched a nerve with me, I think, because of that. But but yeah, just like you said, it's ironic that it's like this is what the film is calling out, and you're the reason why this film was made, right? Because of people like you. I also, by the way, can I just point out,
Sure,
Jane
yeah.
Campion did respond to
Oh, she
his
did.
comments.
Uh-huh.
She did, and I
I
think
didn't
it says in the article,
I didn't read the whole
yeah,
thing. I couldn't read it.
she one of the things she said, which I thought was funny, is that he's an actor, he's not a cowboy, right? Which is so true. It's like you're an actor,
Yeah.
so where you're getting that perspective from, that this is how Western should be made, and this is the only type of character that should be portrayed in a Western film. I mean, I'm not sure who anybody would be to make a claim like that.
I think what touched a nerve for me was that how can you say what does she know about American Western film or American Western culture in general? It's like men have been writing stories about women for centuries.
Mhm.
Number one. Number two is
Absolutely. That's
like
a really good point.
yeah, and for people of color, for Black people, for like I mean, think of like Memoirs of a Geisha. Like it wasn't it like shot by a guy, directed by a guy?
Mm,
What does he know about Japanese culture?
right.
But everyone applauded him when that movie came out. I mean, I still watch that movie. It was beautifully done, shot well, and actors were good. And they weren't even Japanese actors to begin with. That too. Like even casting, like they weren't even Japanese actors. Like the main actress was Chinese.
Right.
Well,
Is
this has
this
been
going to
going
kick us
on.
off, by the way?
Oh yeah, well, okay, hold on. Let me. Yeah, it was bad timing.
I know we were in the middle of such a good thought. But
Yeah.
you know what? While we were taking our break, I actually pulled up the article or I had the article, but I was kind of reading through the rest of it, and oh my God, I have to read this. Um,
Please,
if you don't mind. I'm
please.
sorry. I know you were in the middle of. So this was so there's two things. First, Campion, so Jane Campion, made her comments initially, and then she later responded with some more comments. And she said, quote, "I think it's really unfortunate and sad for him," meaning Sam Elliott, because he's hit the trifecta of misogyny and xenophobia and homophobia, end quote. Which I think was also true, kind of ties into that whole, the fact that she, as a non-American woman, like the idea that she can't tell the story is kind of ridiculous. And you were talking about that too, right? You're talking about men telling stories by women. So I don't know if you want to kind of pick up that.
I mean, it happens all the time, I mean, I watch a lot of anime. Anime does the same thing. Japanese anime. They tell stories of, the Europeans so many times. Like
Mm-hmm.
in the US, it happens all the time. I mean, it happens everywhere. So it's like, why all of a sudden is this a problem? Like, why is this a problem? And you know what? Even if she did portray it poorly, then she portrayed it poorly. Like, it's not, that's the whole point of creating, just creating in general, whether you're writing stories or whether you're shooting films or anything. Like everything that we're doing in life is experimental, right? We don't even know if it's gonna be
Right.
good. We don't even know if it's gonna succeed. I mean, that's the whole point of creating, right? Like you have this process and this exploration, and you carry it all through the end and put it out there. And the whole process and exploration is there for a reason. Like you don't know if it's gonna do well. You don't even know yourself,
Mm-hmm.
like as it's even like the right portrayal, but it's a very interesting point of view. But that's the whole point of like what we do in life, like whether
Yeah.
you're an A-list director or not. Like that's just the point.
But
Like
it
sometimes sorry, I don't mean cut you off. Go ahead.
no, I'm cutting you off. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, like, and if it wasn't good, I mean, the way that he like his response to it was just so aggressive. To say like, I wasn't really like a fan of it. It just didn't really, portray, American Westerns, blah, 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 whatever. If he
Right.
said it a very certain way, but like when you sent me that article and I read it, I was like, this is really aggressive. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that was not me. There are movies that I've
Yeah.
seen that are like have been directed or shot by like a white person of a black story or whatever, and I'm like, not that great. I'm not into it. But I'm not gonna be like, oh, was a piece of shit.
Right. Yeah. Or how about this? Maybe just don't comment at all, especially when your comments are going to be very insensitive to a very large group of people.
Yeah.
It's, maybe just don't say anything. But I think you're right. And if you are going to say that you dislike something, I tell my students this all the time. You can definitely disagree. You can have, a negative opinion on something. Absolutely. That is your right. And I firmly believe that across the board. However, when it comes to pieces of art and things like this, like I think just because we both work in this industry, Keisha, that like I'm so set on, one of the things I always say is you better have a valid reason for it, right? Like and by valid I mean that you are having a critical opinion of it, not just I'm against the fact that there's homosexuality in this. So that means the whole movie is a piece of shit. That to me just like does not fly, right? And like you were saying before, it's funny because that came into my head when you were saying reading the article. It's like you would text me like, did he watch the same movie, right? Because he's acting like it's like there's something obscene in it, right? Or like
Yeah.
is it like it's gay porn or something, right? um when I directed my show last year that also was met for the same reason, right? The show was too gay. And the way that it was talked about, right? This is what got me. And I said the same thing, Keisha, to I don't know how many people. It was the way that it was talked about by certain people. You would have thought that I had put something obscene up on stage,
Yeah.
right? And so it just, yeah, like I said, it just really touched a nerve with me. But you know what, the other thing that came into my head too, and I was thinking about this earlier today, is this whole idea of this story also being told by a non-American woman is it kind of, it really makes you understand the importance of perspective on things. And I kind of wonder if, we were talking about before, growing up in America, right, being exposed to Westerns or at least Western culture and the idea of what that should be. It kind of makes you wonder if this type of story would ever have been told by an American, right?
I knew where you were going with that. I knew. And no,
Right.
I really don't think so. I think there's something because the origin of an American cowboy, um, is very specific. Like it came, obviously we know how Europeans came to this country. Well, I mean, not this country, but like this land,
Right.
this country, this land. The whole thing happened. Blah, blah, blah. And at some point, like down the line, like these cowboys, like they just, started to develop, and because they were exploring the West more, and I am not saying this history correctly at all, so excuse me, but yes, like they were exploring the West more, and like there was a new formed identity, right, around all of
Yeah.
this, especially going away from like the Church of England and like the European countries and blah 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 blah. So it's a new form of identity of like these like men, and rightly so, it's rightly so. They're outdoors, they're in the sun, they're doing all these like physical things and like eating foods that are very like hearty masculine like type of like everything just very like heavily masculine. And they're going to saloons, they're drinking their drinks and being with women, and like they're dirty and they're tired and they've been like moving a lot all day, and like they find a nice pretty lady and she's all like wearing frilly and white and all that stuff, rightly so. Like it's just a thing that had developed, and like when you do watch those films and shows, whatever, it is a very, I don't want to use the terms like misogynistic or anything like that. Like I just want to like forget that for a second, but it's like
Yeah.
you do see these like stereotypical types, these like rugged men who are very attractive and these like women who are very beautiful, and like the women are all powdered and soft and like wearing pretty makeup, and they're like talking like this, and their hair is the wind, and they're like, no, John, don't leave. And the guy goes, I'm a lone ranger, I don't stick around. And like
Right.
and honestly they're very addicting to watch once you get into it, right? There's no room in between. It's just very black and white.
Right.
Literally very black and white. I'm just kidding. But it's very black and white. And I think like and like a lot of it, like a lot of America is built on like American conservative like conservative like behavior. Not politically,
Yeah.
like just conservative, like spiritually, sexually, emotionally, and with that conservative nature, they're very strict on like what's a man's role and what's a woman's role, and that has like developed over time.
Right.
I don't think, unless I'm mistaken, like I don't think if an American were to create a story like this, if they were able to like touch on it, because another problem with like the American like uh vision is like they would make it sexual
Mm-hmm.
because she's
Yeah.
not American. It was very, and it goes back to sexuality. She made it very sensual, and I feel like an American writer or director would either make it sexual, or if she were a woman writer and director, she would probably be told you have to put a sexual scene in there.
Right.
Because even
Right.
like that last scene when they were sharing the cigarette, I was like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that's it. Nothing happened.
Right. Right.
Went to the next day. Even and like the only time they ever really, really like touched like was when Peter held Phil's arm when he was freaking out about the hides. That
Right.
was like that was a really big touch. It wasn't even subtle. It was just like
Yeah. Or even or even thinking about the nudity in in the film,
yeah,
right? That it was not sexual,
sexualized.
right? Which you never see
I
hardly
think,
ever,
I think also
right?
like even though women are always it's always talked about that women are objectified, men are objectified too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think again with the American like gaze, like it'll whoever would have been in that position that would be American would sexualize or objectify like the male figure, and they didn't do that.
Right,
They were
right.
speaking.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, one more thing from the article, and then we can kind of leave this behind. But um, Benedict Cumberbatch also responded to the comments, and so it has a quote by him. It says that he referred obliquely to Eliot's comments as a quote denial that anybody could have any other than a heteronormative existence because of what they do for a living or where they're born, end quote, as indicative of a continued, quote, massive intolerance within the world at large toward homosexuality, end quote. So I think that's also perfectly summed up, kind of touched upon what you were saying, right? That this is how it is and that it can't be any other way, right? Or that, which is the whole problem, right? Which is exactly what he's saying. And I think he says it in sort of his very um uh sort of British, kind of, proper way, if I can say so. But it's like, this idea of like, um, that, that Sam Elliott's comments were basically saying that no one else could have had this experience except a straight male, masculine male, right? And that whole notion is completely ridiculous. Um,
Also weird,
so
but like I mean, homosexuality and the fluidity of sexuality has existed since beginning of time. It exists in animals. Like it's not something that's that's new.
right,
It has existed since the beginning of life. Like it's just there's no argument there. That's just life. So you're telling me
right,
that there's no way that during that time, that era of a like the typical American like Western like cowboys sort of like persona, like there was not one gay person, or at least not one
right,
person battling with their sexuality, because they don't have to necessarily be gay, right? It's like sometimes, and that's like another. I think that's why I love why this film is so ambiguous, is because when someone is battling with their sexuality, it doesn't always necessarily mean that they're gay.
right,
I felt like he just directly went to, well, oh, homosexuality. It's like, well, that's not. He could have been anything else, and it didn't necessarily strictly mean that he was gay. It could have just meant that, he was probably again struggling with his own sexuality, which does not necessarily mean that you're gay. It just means that in a environment where you have to be strictly either a male or female, and it's like you can't flow into the other or back to you. It's like it does something to you internally. You could be
right,
bisexual, you could be this, that, whatever. And it's like you're telling me not one person felt that way.
right.
Like there's just
Right.
it's
It kind of reminds me of years ago when, Pete Buttigieg, when he was running for president and, being openly gay. I remember one interview with him where he was saying, that, they were calling out, well, if you became president, right, you'd be the first gay president. And he kind of said, well, at least first openly gay, right? And so they were saying, kind of questioning him about that. And he was like, well, statistically speaking, presidents and the given the amount of presidents that we had, have had in our country, it's, statistically speaking, it's likely that one of them was gay and, was not open about it or whatever. Right. And so it's like, but, for some people, it's like they take that and it's like, well, how dare you say that? Right. And it's like, can you not open up your mind to think that that was the case? Right. I mean,
How dare you say how dare you say how dare you? Because you're telling me that you're invalidating like a person's existence and like what they're dealing with internally. How dare you?
exactly. Exactly. And it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, kind of, it is ridiculous when you think about it because it's you're taking a certain population of men, right? Because all of our presidents have been men, and saying that a homosexual politician could not have become president. I mean,
Yeah.
that notion to me is just ridiculous. So it's kind of the same thing here, right? It's like, and I think that's what Benedict Cumberbatch is saying, right? It's like that in certain professions or certain places in the world that you can only have that you can only have a hetero, what did he say, heteronormative is the word that he used, which I've never really heard before, but heteronormative existence
Mhm.
um, is kind of, it's silly. But anyway, so I thought that was an interesting article and, really kind of called into question all the issues with, I don't want to say with the film, but with people's perception of the film, or at least, some
I
perception.
appreciate you for reading the whole article because I couldn't. I
Well,
I
it just
just
had
learned
so many good things in there. And as someone, I enjoy gossip, so I'm like, I want to see what they said and how they responded. And it's, but they responded very intelligently, I think all of them. And
well, because they are.
um they
And
are.
I
Yeah.
imagine Benedict Cumberbatch, I mean, all of the actors, but especially him, you know, having to like be able to take on a different viewpoint in order to like embody the character. But what the scene that I like a lot, speaking of like a male, um, having to be strictly again the typical conservative masculine male,
Mm,
whatever that is to people, but like that toxic, like I to me I see it as a very toxic masculine like viewpoint because again, we said George like embodied the healthy version of it, but even in the beginning, uh Phil, he made fun of the flowers,
right.
burned it, and he laughed at Peter for it, and it's like it made me think like. I mean, at that point, his character, like Peter's character, no, sorry, Phil's character, like annoyed me. I just found him really annoying at that point.
Yeah.
But as the film was going on, I was thinking back to that moment. I'm like, that's sad because the type of persona he was putting on to be that like that again heavily masculine like leader, like I'm a man type of guy, couldn't even like flowers, couldn't even appreciate it. Like
Yeah.
I started rewatching How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I haven't, no.
There's there's a scene where or one of the episodes um that's like two of the couples were like at a bar and they were kind of like arguing between like, is it harder for women to go out or harder for men to go out? Like women get hit on all the time, whatever. Like you guys should be lucky, whatever. They're just having that kind of conversation. And they had like a debate, like, oh yeah, like which one's worse? And one of the characters, Marshall, was like, you guys have it better. You guys can like order like the fruity drinks than like with the pretty stuff on it. I want a fruity drink. And like, later in the episode, they're all hanging out like at one of their apartments, and he goes to the kitchen and he makes a drink, and he comes back, and it's this like really pretty like pinkish red drink with like an umbrella on top. And his girlfriend was like, "Oh, is that for me? Thank you." And he's like, "Yeah." And he made it for himself. It was funny because when he walked into the room, he was just like,
Yeah.
gave it away. And he's yeah.
Yeah. Oh my, it's so true though. That it's so true. Like all of those things, I imagine for men too, how difficult, straight men too, right? Like how difficult certain things are that shouldn't be or that are ridiculous, you know? One of the musical that I directed last year that was the controversial one, um, which also, by the way, it was funny you had said about this film, right, that it uh, in a similar way, it's the story. So the musical was kind of about uh, looking at, or at least the way that I took it was sort of looking at different genders and sort of examining masculine, feminine roles, but also the theme of the show, right? This was 12th Night, by the way, 12th
Mhm.
Night the musical, and it was all about acceptance, right? And like the final number is like, accept people for what they are. They're different from you, like, and so that was what also made it really ridiculous, right? That's what was happening afterwards, but that it's like you completely missed the point of the show, right? But one of the things that we talked about a lot in our rehearsals were what does it actually mean to be masculine and feminine? And there's scenes where, say, like, the Duke, for example, it's like the way I had them kind of on stage was like, this is sort of the feminine side. This is where the Lady Olivia lives, and then this is where Duke Orsino lives, and sort of the masculine side, right? Um, and sort of in the middle is like this, just like this kind of fluid, like no one really knows, like blending of the two. Um, but at that point, I remember really thinking about this a lot because there were moments where, say, like the Duke would be, uh, representing a lot of like what you would consider feminine qualities, right? Like his emotional state, things like that, that we consider, showing his emotion a lot more. In Olivia, having moments of more masculine traits, right? And I talk about this in my director's note and everything, that it is an interesting idea, right, when you think about it, and all these things too in life that people just deal with, is or just see, like as a society we put things into, oh well, that's too feminine, that's too masculine, right? um so yeah, I mean, it's funny that you can kind of take that into a sitcom and find the humor in that, but there is something really real about that too, that we do that, you
Yeah,
know
especially with the taunting of it, right? Because it's like had Phil's character and the power of the dog like liked the flowers,
mm,
it's like, and that time is obviously way different than it is now. It's um he would be running the risk of being made fun of and being taunted.
yeah. But
And
even now, though, in certain communities, right, or in certain social settings,
yeah,
right, you would still face that.
and it's interesting to me, George's character was so interesting because he was taking in the abuse and was not letting it affect him.
Yeah.
There were moments that I was like laughing. I was just laughing out loud because there was a moment, I can't remember what it was, but um Phil George came home. The Argus came in late one night. I don't know why.
Yeah.
He's helping
That
out.
scene came into my head too.
Yeah, yeah, and like and, like Phil just started going on like it just saying
About
outlandish,
the women.
yeah, like to his brother, and like George's reaction was, "Okay, I'm going to bed."
Yes.
So I was like
Yeah.
laughing.
That was the moment that came into my head too, when you were talking about George just sort of taking things, and
Yeah.
also just in a
And
similar
laughing
way
because
to.
it was just funny how he was like he just didn't give a well he cared, he gave a shit, but he didn't give a shit.
Yeah, yeah.
He was
He
going,
didn't let it affect him. Yeah. But like in a similar way to Kirsten Dunst's character, right? Where you said she doesn't have any lines, right? He didn't. It's like he said so much by not saying anything, right? In that moment, that was the one that came into my head too, where Benedict Cumberbatch is talking about like the women and all, like, remember when they brought all those women on and we were all like turned on, everything, and
had
yeah,
all the
just
hard-ons and
sharing this whole, yes, exactly, right, like being very you used the word aggressive before, like being very aggressive
vulgar. Yeah, very vulgar.
and yeah, vulgar, right? Because that's what men should be, right? And then yeah, and then him just kind of sitting there not saying anything, but then also Benedict Cumberbatch's response to that, getting angry,
Yeah.
right? Like him not sort of giving into this kind of attitude or anything that he's throwing out there. It's just like, well, I'm gonna go to bed. Good night, Phil, whatever. And then he leaves, right?
Yeah.
And that just fuels his anger even more, right? Yeah, that scene came into my head too. As soon as you were talking about George's character, that was the one I thought of.
Yeah. Side note, my favorite moments and like, just in film in general is when a very uh a character full of flaws lashing out at someone or questioning someone and projecting onto another character and the character just doesn't
Just
respond.
unfazed.
It's like my
Yeah.
favorite thing. I don't know why. I just find it always very hilarious. That moment was like one of my favorite moments of George himself.
Mhm.
Um, the mother's character, Kirsten Dunst's
Yeah,
character.
we haven't talked about her much.
Yeah, I couldn't. I found her character very interesting, especially being. It's so. I mean, women in that era, they're indoors all the time, right? And
Mm.
they're just like, I mean, no offense, they're not really doing much. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously she was doing stuff by, cooking and taking care of the food and the service and everything, but women didn't really do much during that time because they didn't socialize
Right.
as frequently or fluidly the way the men did. As freely, I guess I should say, not as freely as they could. And like her job really was to take care of Peter and like, look after him. And that was kind of like her only thing. Like what she was taking care of was so narrow.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting when like Phil was just playing mind games with her, like the whole music portion of it
The music, yeah.
was creepy AF.
Yes, it was.
I got
Yeah.
I got
It
chills in
was,
that whole scene, and
yeah.
that was the most uncomfortable scene.
Yes, it was. I was gonna say, like, there were a few scenes that throughout the movie where you just feel like uneasy because you're like, I don't really know what's gonna happen or I don't know what's going on here. And that one for me definitely stood out the most, like in terms of just, yeah, it just kind of gives you like all the uncomfortable feels, for sure. Because you weren't really sure what he was gonna do, but I think it's pretty obvious he's trying to, outpower her, right? And it's just so strange that it's the music thing I didn't quite get either, to be honest, because then there's the scene after where she's sort of playing, and so I was trying to I feel like I didn't have as much of a good grasp on her, and I think that's where watching the film again, because I agree with you, I was planning on maybe watching again just to see if I could pick up any more, right? Or which I'm sure I would, um, with kind of watching it through her character's journey, because I think she has an interesting one. We know that she's widowed, right? Um, and I agree. It's kind of like her son is sort of her primary focus, and then there's the whole, um, obviously she's increasingly uncomfortable around Phil, and then she kind of has that outburst at the end where Phil and Peter go off, and she's like, I don't want him to be around, I don't want my son to be around him, and so I just felt like there was so much there that wasn't quite clear to me, but I know that it had an intention, with her.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that I need to watch it again to get understand her character more. I did see it as a form of like internalizing because women during that time, I mean, do they really speak up about their problems? Do they
Mm,
express about their emotions or problems? Like, who do they talk to? She's surrounded by men mostly
yeah.
that were like working there, like they weren't of her status. So she really had no one to talk to and of course that was a time when women didn't communicate their feelings or their problems or their issues.
Right.
um and I imagine she was just internalizing, especially with the drinking. I mean, she had the bottles of liquor in her bed with her. So like that's how
Yeah.
she was just coping. She was just imploding.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw it as, like I was saying before with his, someone that's, increasingly repressed as, uh, like acts out in abusive ways, right? So like with his abuse and his sort of psychological torment of her, it's just sort of her spiraling. But I just felt like there was so much, I just felt like there was so much more to her, that you can kind of see. It's almost like you can kind of see the film as, through her perspective or through Phil's perspective. I mean, really through anyone, but I think those two kind of really stand out, and yeah, I don't know. And then there's something about just like that kind of relief at the end when he's gone and he's out of the picture. Um, which is also just really sad, I think, consider when you really understand what he had been what he personally had been experiencing. That by taking him out of the picture is what led to sort of the happy ending, the sort of, you know, um, resolved, you know.
Yeah, because he even gets to like live a life like his brother because he couldn't socially he
Right.
wouldn't be accepted.
Yeah.
I know we have only 9 minutes to our Zoom, but I just wanted to point out one more thing because you mentioned like
Mm.
there were some scenes that kind of made you uncomfortable. The scene when when all the hides were gone and Phil was freaking out in the barnyard and like or in the stable, the horse's stable. And when Peter touched his arm and there was that moment when Phil like held onto his like the nape of his neck. I couldn't tell in that moment. I'm like, I can't tell if they're going to kiss or if he's gonna knock him the fuck out.
Yeah.
It was like either one.
Right.
And neither one of those things happened. But it was just like, he's gonna bash his head.
Yeah.
I don't know. And either way, it's gonna be very extreme. Like I don't know.
Right. Right. I know. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I wasn't thinking of that one either, but it really like now that you said that, it really makes you think about like how much I would be so fascinated to see how Benedict Cumberbatch like really prepared for all of that, like it's just there was so much. Sorry if you can hear my dogs in the background, they're barking. There was just so much detail to his performance and so much unease around him. I think he just did a brilliant job. But yeah, I completely forgot. That wasn't even one of the ones that came into my head, but you're absolutely right. As you were talking, I was like, oh yeah. So interesting. And that unpredictability. Yeah.
Such a
Totally.
I could go on and on and on talking about the power of the dog. I feel like there's so much more to it. But
definitely recommend it.
I don't know. I feel like another 40 minutes of this will exhaust ourselves.
Yes, I agree.
I don't want to do it. Highly recommended film. I think, like I said, it's probably it made it to like one of my top favorites.
Yeah.
She also directed The Piano, which came out in the early 90s. And I saw it as a kid, but I saw it as a kid, so I don't really know. I don't really remember much about it. But I don't know what our next film or show is gonna be. I figured we can just text each other, find something, and see if we can like find something on our own. And we'll just text.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah, sounds good. I know we're thinking of sort of straying away from the stories by women because it's kind of too difficult still, right?
It's too difficult. I think there is opportunity for us to find stuff, but it's like I can't go around spending money on like all these subscriptions.
Yeah.
It's like it's just too much. I'm just looking up at if we had like another doc. Another movie in our doc. I'm trying to think if there was one.
There was a foreign film, I thought. Wasn't it a Korean film or something that you had wanted to watch?
Oh, there was a Korean show.
Oh, the show.
Yeah. And it's not Skies Everywhere. Oh, Little Women? Where the Crawdads
Is that on Netflix? What is that on?
Where the Crawdads Sing was another one.
Oh, that's the one we were gonna watch.
Yeah. We can make that our next one unless we find something.
Okay. All right. I'm thinking for that. Sounds good.
Oh God, I'm so happy that you recommended this one because.
Well, I just came across it and I was like, oh, it was done by a woman.
Yeah.
And that's really.
And that
I had no idea what it was about. And it had